Cruelty-Free Living with Natasha. In today's video, we will be discussing food shortage, food wastage, and food security. With me today, we have Scelo Madondo. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Natasha.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions here lined up for you.
Yeah.
And you can just discuss whatever comes to heart with us. But I'm very excited to discuss the topic of today with you because I feel it's something that we need to discuss on our daily basis. My first question is, tell us a bit about yourself, your origin, your age, your qualifications, and your current occupation.
Okay. Scelo is a Soweto born. I'm from the People's Democratic Republic of Soweto, born and bred. I grew up in Soweto, and I studied high school, primary school, high school in Soweto, and thereafter I pursued a bachelor's degree at the University of South Africa, which unfortunately I couldn't complete. And then in 1992, I came down to Cape Town. I studied at the then Peninsula Technikon, now the Cape Peninsula University of Technology. I did a national higher diploma in education, commerce. I specialized in the commerce field. And after that, I did a bit of work for different government departments. I've worked for the Department of Education. I've been in private business. I've worked for tourism, City of Cape Town. I've worked for the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I've done quite a bit. And a few years ago, after, business, always business goes up and down. After experiencing some tedious time in business and some difficulties, I went back to full-time studies. I did a development honors degree at the University of the Western Cape, and I'm now pursuing my master's degree in development studies. Yeah, I'm 50 years old. I was born in 1971, and that's me. I love development. I'm a footballing fanatic, and I do a whole lot of community development work also. But my main areas of interest and specialization lately is food and nutrition security, and I specialize in food waste. My master's thesis is on food waste.
Absolutely wonderful. Okay, and then my second question is, what are your extracurricular interests or present engagements?
Well, I do a bit of this and a bit of that. Like I say, I'm more into, development. The development space is my terrain. I do community development. I work with youth. I've got sports programs. I work with youth mainly. But within that space, I'm involved in a business development program with Professor Ahrens, and we try and assist small business people to get into the mainstream of business activities. It's a bit difficult, but we need lots of funding to get such programs in action. But we try and assist young entrepreneurs, especially those that have got potential to create more employment, because the youth unemployment is almost now at 70% in South Africa, and we are at a point where if nothing is done in the next, in the near future, we are definitely going to find ourselves in trouble. So it's as part of my development activities, we do entrepreneurship development. And then I also, am engaged in ICT for development. We are busy with Professor Taka trying to raise funds to assist communities, especially in the area where I'm based now, in the Blue Downs, Blackheath, Gales Rivers, even in Stellenbosch farming communities, to try and help them in terms of the data is so expensive in South Africa today, and if communities can come together to try and explore possibilities of creating their own free networks, then it would ease that burden in terms of their, stretching their rent from their income. Because if you look at it today, most people earn so little, they spend most of their money in transport to go to work, and then, they don't have extra cash for other necessities like communication, finding employment, and things like that. So we are working on those gaps to try and assist communities. But that's basically some of the things that I'm doing.
And when you talk about funding, you said it takes a lot of funding. Where do you apply for this funding? Where do you normally get your funding from?
Well, there are different entities locally and internationally. At the moment, we're talking to private business, we're talking to government, and we're talking to different philanthropists and foundations. We are really at a point where the negotiations are gaining momentum, and we're having promises, but you can't live on promises. We are still hoping to sign that contract where cash will come in and then projects will get off the ground. Included within some of my project activities, I'm part of a cooperative. It's called Mzansi Co-op. It's basically in the farming space where we try and bring together expertise and skills for people who've got interest, especially previously disadvantaged, members of communities who come from the deprived, formerly deprived, well, still deprived as far as I'm concerned, members of those communities, to try and come together to access opportunities, to get land and to get into the farming space. We are looking into fruits, vegetables production. We are looking into lately the cannabis industry. And yeah, that's basically some of the things that we're doing. And as you know, it's always a problem to secure funds for these projects. I hope I pray that we can have the right people in government who can identify these opportunities, because that is basically what South Africa needs to grow our economy.
The need for it. Absolutely. Okay, so tell us about your youth and community development work.
Well, mainly at this stage, as part of what I was just saying earlier, the information communication technology for development program is I'm doing that with Professor Tucker. Bill Tucker is a professor at the University of Stellenbosch, and we are at a stage where we've gotten through the community. We've done the groundwork. Research has been done in terms of what the community needs, and at a point where we get funding, then we'll be able to say the community gets involved, because it's difficult to draw people into a project that is not funded. Absolutely. You can't bring people in and you expect them to work as volunteers, and you don't even give them a stipend. There's mothers there who are unemployed, there's youths who are unemployed, so we need to have funds to get the project going. But in the long run, as soon as we get it up and running, because this will be, well, it won't be free internet or free, communication facility, but it will be very minimally priced in that, for example, in Mankosi, in the Eastern Cape, Prof. Tucker has got a project that he implemented there, and those people, I think they pay about 25 cents for a megabyte of data, and it's actually very affordable, because it's actually 25 cents per month for unlimited megabytes. I can't remember, I must just get the correct information, but it's so minimal that if you compare it with what these communications companies are charging us, then you realize that we are really being
ripped off.
We are being ripped
Big
off.
time, eh?
It's a cheat. It's a rip-off, really. They are cheating.
My next question is, can you please tell us a little bit more about food security and nutrition?
Okay, Tess, look, food and nutrition security, it's a very broad field. In fact, it's such a broad field that lately the United Nations and all these organs of the UN that are attached to food and nutrition security, they've realized that there's no point in them and other national governments and institutions and entities within localities, there's no point in them working in silos, because everyone has been doing a bit of this and a bit of that, and we end up not having a proper coordinated global food and nutrition program. So now they're introducing a new concept called a food systems program. Food systems is a program that entails everything about food from farm to fork, so to speak. From the origins of food, different farming entities, right through the value chain up until the product is delivered to the home. So the food systems involves the transportation, the storage, everything you can think of until food comes to the consumption phase. And when we talk about food security, food and nutrition security, there are about 3 or 4 elements that are important. Firstly, it's the availability of food and the accessibility of food, and then we talk about also affordability of food, and we talk about the utilization, because at times you find food is there, people can access it, they can afford it, but after they get the food, then they still waste it. So there are, like I say, a number of elements attached to food security. And then in communities that are impoverished, poor communities, it becomes even more complex, because now there's a whole lot of new scientific studies on the type of food that people eat, how nutritious is it, and people who don't have a choice, like some communities you find people eating millipap every day. There's no variety and things like that. So those are all the elements that are attached to food and nutrition security. But like I say, it's a very broad field of study. It's a shame that in our school's curriculum we don't have food and nutrition security as a domain on its own. I think instead of teaching kids about Jan van Riebeeck and Napoleon and all that, I'm not saying that is not important, it's part of history, but we should be focusing on what is important now, because there's so much unemployment, there's so much hunger, there's so much poverty, there's child malnutrition, children are stunted. We find ourselves between a rock and a hard place. So if we were to teach our kids about food and nutrition security, I'm sure that would make a difference in terms of growing a society or a nation that is healthy. And it's part and parcel of what I'm doing now, the work that I do in my research program. On my master's, I'm focusing on food and nutrition security, and my core area of focus is food wastage.
Wow, very busy man, eh?
Well, I try and make time for a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But my core sort of, primarily what I do now, I've just finished my thesis on food wastage, and my study is focusing on the Kraaifontein area of Wallerstein, and I look at how households can be assisted to reduce food waste, and what can be done in terms of developing consciousness and arousing that interest in people, especially the youth and the young ones, to take care of our resources, because food waste is it's a dominion on its own. It's a field of study on its own. There's a whole lot of impact. There's a wider impact that food waste brings into the bigger space of climate change, global warming, and all those issues. Because if you look at the number and the amount of landfills that are there, and all the the toxins, the emissions from the landfills, and the impact of that to the environment. So there's a whole lot that people need to learn, instead of just dumping food and digging a hole and throwing all the resources, because there's a whole lot of work that goes into food production. You can imagine if you are a farmer, for example, and you spend, say for example, 100,000 rands per annum on production of so many tons of maize. If half of that goes into the ground, that could have fed a whole lot of people. And it's a shame, really, because we see these things happen. But we have to educate people.
Absolutely. You should maybe do short courses on it. For people that are really interested, I'm one of the people that would be interested in that.
Oh, thank you. That is the idea. I'm actually talking to some of the senior people, and I know for sure that the Center of Excellence in Food Security at the University of the Western Cape and at the University of Pretoria, they are involved in this initiative, and Professor Julian May, Dr. Elaine, and a whole lot of other experts are trying to push to get a module or sort of a division of a module, a short course or something like that, introduced in terms of food and nutrition security, where all those elements then can be introduced into the academic program, and students can learn about these things.
Yes.
In my view, my wish would be that the Department of Education would take this into the broader schools curriculum, where kids can be taught about. In the olden days, we used to have home economics and things like that. Those are, some of the things that need to be reintroduced, and kids need to be taught about taking care of food, because without food, without water, we are nothing.
And our kids are not taught that, eh?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I absolutely agree with you. It's a much needed topic that we need to discuss a lot more in our daily lives. Okay, so I know you spoke a little bit about your master's program about food wastage and so forth, but is there anything else in your career going forward that you're studying that you would like to mention to us? Anything moving forward?
Yeah, I've just completed my research on food wastage, and I'm actually waiting for the examiners for grading, and I hope I get a good mark. And do my research into a much more in-depth level, which would be PhD, and then who knows what comes after. But the important thing is, the vision is not just to accumulate all these qualifications, but to try and delve deeper into these phenomena and learn as much as possible, so that when we introduce solutions, we try and bring solutions that are long-lasting, solutions that have an impact to communities, but most importantly, solutions that are driven by Ubuntu, solutions that are driven by what we are as African communities, because the biggest danger in Africa today is that we always like to cut and paste solutions from Europe, and 90% of the time those solutions don't work for us. So the idea is to learn what's happening on a global scale, and to try and see how that can be used to work for us, and to try and tap into our own indigenous knowledge systems, our own historical and traditional forms of knowledge, to bring better solutions for our youth and our communities. Because I believe that African people, because I say this in my thesis, that as African people, we never had waste. Everything from slaughtering an animal, a cow, a sheep, there was no waste, unlike today where, if you go to the abattoirs, from the blood to the skin, everything is just waste. But in the African way of life, Ubuntu dictated that you don't waste anything. I mean, some of the authors, the African authors like Menz and all of them, will tell you that it's criminal for any African person to slaughter a cow and keep it to themselves. If I slaughter an animal today and keep it to my core immediate family, and then say, this is mine, in 2 or 3 days' time, the whole meat is rotten, I have to throw it away. It's criminal. I mean, in the traditional way of life, if I slaughter a cow, even a stranger walking past would be offered, food to eat. So today you find some of these big corporates, these multinationals and all these big companies, they would have so much production, and because they are not getting a required price, then they take that surplus produce, they dump it into the ocean, or they dig a hole and throw food away. You don't do that in the African way of life. Ubuntu dictates that whatever you have must be shared, whether it's knowledge, whether it's resources, strength, ability, we share. But because we are too westernized and we think the Western way of the civilization of the Westerns is best for us, look where we are today.
Absolutely.
Look, I'm not saying that everything from the Western culture is wrong, but look at what the French Revolution has done to our industry.
Yeah.
the steam engines and all the pollution, and we can't say that is development. If you count the amount of emissions from the 1900s when, you know, the motor vehicle was started up till today, would you say that is development?
No. But if you look at it perspective where you don't have all the knowledge, like you have a lot more knowledge about this. If I was just a person living my day-to-day life, I would feel that that's development. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I see things progress.
Yeah.
But like you said, our progress is actually damaging the earth. And so
This problem, Tesh, is the denialists, you know. If now you find, look, for example, in KZN, we've had floods where, you know, the whole highway became a river. I mean, it's a sign that things are changing. It's not a business as usual. You look at the drought now in the Eastern Cape, in the Northern Cape. In Port Elizabeth, as we speak now, in Gqeberha, they are having day 0, I think. There's no water. Where's the water? Why is it not raining when there are floods in KZN? You know, these
it's
these
crazy.
are signs, these are small signs that the globe, you know, the environment, it's indications that we need to heed to. It's happened in Mozambique. We had floods a couple of years ago, and then it happened 10 years ago again. But I guess politicians need that, you know, that nudge. We need to say to them, hey, look, guys, that's what's happening. And experts like all these you know, researchers and people who know about these things, they need to be more vocal. We need to speak more about it.
Yes.
And educate people. Like you say, if somebody is not aware, you can't blame them.
Exactly.
But if you teach them and you show them these are the signs, then they start realizing, oh my goodness, I shouldn't be wasting, I shouldn't be throwing food away, I shouldn't be. Then it becomes, you know, a general discourse. We speak about it generally.
Yeah. My next question is your future plans with your PhD.
Oh yeah, like I said, I'm waiting for my my master's grading. As soon as I've gotten my results, hopefully the examiners will recommend that I'm allowed into the PhD program. And I hope to progress my research into PhD level, where I can dig a little bit deeper into people's attitudes on food waste, in how we as communities think we can come up with localized solutions. You know, there's a new approach now to food and nutrition security. They call it the territorial approach, where, you know, problems for specific areas are not taken to be problems of the general society. You know, in South Africa, you know, we've got a whole lot of inequality. In fact, South Africa is in my books, the highest, most unequal society in the world, where you get those that are extremely rich, you know, living amongst those that are extremely poor. So we cannot necessarily believe or come up with solutions for the two different communities that would, you know, reflect differently. Because if I live below the poverty line, if I live under the bread line, and, you know, I live under $2 or 20 rands a day, and somebody else lives over 10,000 rands an hour, you cannot compare those two communities and say, you know, we'll bring the same solution to the problem. So we need to dig deep in terms of our research and look into exactly what do we need, how do we go about these, you know, ideas of bringing food conservation, nature conservation, environmental conservation to communities. Because one thing will mean something for a rich person and it means something else for a poor individual. So, you know, one needs
the realities are completely different.
Absolutely. So I guess that is how I believe my growth in the academic fraternity will drive me into, you know, coming up with solutions, because that is what education is about. Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe once said, education for us is service to Africa. If we can just keep that in mind, to say, I'm not getting educated as an individual to become a professor, a doctor, or a teacher, or what. I'm getting educated to serve my community, to serve Africa.
Most important.
Absolutely.
We have to take care of each other, take care of our communities. only then we will prosper.
You know, my parents, my mom and my dad used to tell us as kids, and I come from a big family. I've got 4 brothers and 5 sisters.
Wow.
Among the most important lessons I learned was that the main 2 purposes why we are here on earth. The first one is to praise and worship the Creator, and the second one is to be of service to human nature. If we can just stick to those 2 rules.
And it is stipulated like that within our Bible. Love thy neighbor,
Absolutely.
always help the ones in need.
Absolutely.
But yet we forget that on a daily basis,
I
eh?
guess it's the commercialization of everything. Everything is about commerce, money, wealth, and you know, we want to flaunt what we have, and we forget that when I die, it's not how much I've got, it's what I've done. You know,
It's the memories you leave behind. People, the experiences you had with people that will stay with them forever.
That's
you know?
your legacy.
And you want to be one of those people one day that will be missed. You want people to miss you one day, not to say, oh, thank you, Lord, that person is gone. Like we can do with less people like that.
Your,
you know?
your legacy will count, and people will not say he had so many mentions. They will talk about how you touched their lives. That's
the
the
difference
most
you
important
made.
thing.
The difference you made.
Absolutely.
Politics.
Politics. Personal, South African, national, international, where African, where do you want to go?
Let's start with South Africa.
South African politics. I guess you want to know if am I a member of any political
I
organization.
would love to know that, yes.
Well, I grew up from my foundation has always been the Pan-Africanist school of thought. I've always believed that as an African, I owe my allegiance to Africa and to my people, you know. And before you do anything as an African, you always consider the next person. Before we eat, as an African, you have to make sure that everybody else has had something to eat, then I can eat. If we all used such philosophies, the Ubuntu principles, I don't think we would be having these problems that we're having today. Today we're having criminals as politicians, we're having greedy individuals, even those that claim to be Christians. You get surprised when you see, you know, their actions when it comes to distribution of food parcels, for example. A person says,
We all saw what happened during
exactly,
COVID.
exactly, that's what I'm thinking now. You know, you've got 1,000 bags of food parcels in your garage, and you're a local councillor, and you say to us you're a Christian.
Earning 100,000 rand a month.
It's a shame. So
Yeah.
I'm not a member of any of these bigger, well-popular, you know, political organizations. I belong to a very driven organization called the Organic Community Movement, and it's growing. A lot of people are starting to talk about it, and it's all over in the news. It's all over on YouTube. If you just Google OHM, Organic Community Movement, you'll see our vision and what we aim to achieve. We are not into populist politics, and even myself, I'm still trying to find my footing around the philosophy, the concepts of OHM. But I believe if all of us were to view the world from the lenses of OHM, I think South Africa will be a better place. One thing that attracted me the most to OHM was its vision for land redistribution. I believe without land, we are nothing. The main reason why the settlers invaded Southern Africa and pushed people off the land was to own land. And now they've got the land, and we say we are free, but the land still is not coming back. So yeah, we are not. I mean, our resources. South Africa is the most wealthiest country in SADC. In fact, we are among the top 5 richest countries in Africa. We rate with the Democratic Republic of Congo and all of those. If you look at our production, mineral resources, food production. In fact, talking about food, South Africa produces more than enough food for our entire population. But some of us remain hungry because the food is taken to overseas countries. It's a shame. I made an example to a friend recently. I said, if you just take the chrome industry in the mining sector, if you take just the chrome industry, the chromium industry only, South Africa has got over 60% chrome reserves globally. We own 60+% of global chrome reserves on a global scale. And if you were just to take that industry alone and nationalize it, there will never be any person who has to work in South Africa. Do you know that?
But yet we are slaves to a system we didn't choose, right?
Exactly. That is why I believe the organic humanity movement is the
only
only
way.
solution, because all these other political parties, they want to retain the status quo. They want to keep their own egos. I'm this or and so, I'm this or nothing is, as far as I'm concerned, nothing will change in as far as, you know, we are going forward. But if we can have a movement that will change the mindset and change the global dominance of these multinationals and government dominance on people, we need to do away with that. People cannot live life. We need our own freedoms, and we cannot be dictated to by these multinationals just because they control our food, they control food systems, they control transport, they control everything. That has to come to an end.
My next question. Love, marriage, and kids. What's happening in that section?
Oh my word, I didn't expect that one. Yeah, I'm a very loving person. I love myself. That's the starting point of love. I love my family. I love God. I've got 4 children. I'm not married. And to be honest, at this stage, I'm finding it difficult to sort of, you know, shoot an arrow, if you know what I mean, to say, this is the person that I think I love. Because what I'm realizing is that over the years, I've found people who want to be loved, but fail to love themselves. My belief is that love is not this sensation that most people make it to be. Oh, there's Tesh. Oh, I love this one. Oh,
Yeah.
there's so and so. I love them. You know, most people feel loved when they are next to somebody, when they are attracted to someone. For me, that is not love. Love is it's a sensation that comes into your feelings when you think of something that is love.
Yeah.
Anything that is love. For example, I wake up in the morning with my eyes closed. As I awake, I can hear the birds sing. And then I start to smile. I'm like, wow, here's a new day and I'm alive. That is love. I don't need somebody next to me to say, hey, sweetheart, wake up, you know. And then I say, oh, I love. I mean, for me, love it starts within. So I'm still okay with myself and this self-love. And I've got a loving family. I've got brothers, sisters, mom, dad. And I've got a whole network of extended family and self-made families, you know, who are friends that have become family. But on this romantic love, I'm really battling. Maybe I can advertise now too. I'm not thinking about it now. For now, I believe my function, I'm supposed to be a tool to bring development to, you know, poor communities and assist poor people. That's my love. That's where my love
And we
is.
as South Africans appreciate what you are doing
Thank you.
because it needs to be done.
Thank you. Thanks, Tisha.
Okay, and then our last one, religion and spirituality.
Oh yes, I'm a very spiritual person. In fact, I'm more spiritual than religious. There's a big difference between religion and spirituality. Religion is dogma. It's what the church says. Religion is, you get a whole lot of these denominations. I mean, think when Jesus Christ started, he had only 12 apostles. Today, there's millions of people who claim to be Christians, followers of Christ. But even amongst themselves, they are cut into, you know, they are shredded into a number of different denominations. And then this one thinks they are better than that one. That one thinks, I grew up in a Catholic religion. My parents are Catholic, my father, my dad. And I grew up there. You know, I've done everything that has to be done as a child in the Catholic Church. And I reached a point where, as an adult, I'm still Catholic though. As an adult, I came to realize that this Catholic religion, in fact, these Abrahamic religions, they've sort of pigeonholed our minds as African people, that today you find the church, the Catholic Church, the Anglican Church, the Presbyterian Church, all these different churches, they happen to own, I don't know how many percentage of the land. And people are hungry and they're not coming out to say, look, guys, come, there's a pocket of land, let's farm, let's feed the people.
Let's quickly talk about how rich the Vatican is.
Exactly the point. I mean,
are they helping anyone around the world?
I was really, really shocked when I discovered that some of the money that we put in the collections, I don't know what they call it, umnikelo. You know, you give money every day, you go to church, there's a basket there. Some of the money, the Johannesburg diocese, the Cape diocese, some of the money goes to the Vatican. I'm like, hold on a second. Yeah. Why must we give money to the Vatican when those guys, they drink from golden chalices? They've got, I mean, look at the Pope. Have you seen how the Pope dresses?
Gold. I mean, no. I think that he wears on his head alone.
No, I don't give any money when I go to church. I just go to church, you know, to uplift my... But on a spiritual level, I'm very, very spiritual. I believe in my ancestors. We do something called ukupahla. Ukupahla, it's when you take time to talk to your ancestors, you know, to stop everything. You either use water, use candles, whatever you use, impepo, like incense, and you communicate with your spiritual origins. That's what I do every now and again. And I'm fortunate that in my family, you know, we are balanced when it comes to spirituality and family. And so, you know, religion is in our blood as South Africans. We were forced into religious spaces, you know, the missionaries forced us into this, and we cannot run away from it. But beyond religion, I'm a very, very spiritual person, such that I believe sooner or later, you know, the African spirits will rise to bring us back or to take us to a new space where there's no more poor, there's no more poverty, there's no more greed and things like that.
Okay, I've got one more question, actually. I didn't want to tell you about this question. Do you believe in aliens and ghosts?
Well, not necessarily ghosts or aliens, but I believe there's a bigger spiritual power that lies out there. If you want to see that there's bigger spirits, if people die, it's not just the end. We ourselves choose where we are going to belong after our death whilst we are still alive. Whilst you're still alive, you make that choice to say, I want to be, you know, a bad spirit. I want to be a good spirit.
Yeah.
So that by the time you die, then you go to your choice or your camp. That's why people say there's ghosts, because there are good spirits and there are evil spirits. So
thank you so much.
I don't know about aliens. I think I must still do a bit of research. In my next life, I'm gonna choose that field of study.
And then look for me once you have answers, hey?
No, we'll both do that research.
We'll do it together. I am with you on that one. I would love to have more answers.
No problem.
Well, there you have it. I hope you found this video helpful. I hope that the content that was shared with you, you will take home and think about, and hopefully make some changes in your day-to-day life. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
This was really an amazing interview.
Thank you so
much information that I got in. So much more to think about, if I have to put it that way. And I hope the viewers enjoyed this topic. We will definitely have him back once he has received his PhD, which we know he will. And thank you so much for tuning in. And we'll see you soon. Thank you.